All right, my friends, we've got 12.2 million to spend in the transfer budget. We're making moves. Let's go take a look. First, I want to take you back to the squad that we have at the end of the previous season, right? And let's take a look at some of the gaps that we're going to have. So we got Alex Murphy, no longer going to be with us. So essentially, our new left back right now is Solomon Bona, who's really the rotation. He's really a right back, but he can play left back. He's all right there. We have Sotiris on loan as a ball-winning midfielder. We have Ndidi on loan as a ball-winning midfielder / he can also play center back, but we're not going to keep Ndidi. We're thinking about keeping Sotiris, but when you look at the squad, I think we have some changes we need to make. So let's go walk through the outs, because that will maybe help us determine what we're going to be doing moving forward. So when I did the math, here's how I looked at the squad. I said we need a really good left back, we need a ball-winning midfielder, we need a center back, because I'm not really in love with the center back squad we've got. Aside, I do like Kim Joo-hyun, and a kind of a rotational attacking midfielder. To help utilize our funds more capably, if you will, we have sold Augustin Ojeda, who is an attacking midfielder. Here's why. We got 6.75 million for him. No one was sniffing around. We pushed him out the door, essentially. He just didn't do a good job last season. Now, that wasn't all with me, but 4 starts, 19 subs on a 6.63 just wasn't cutting it. I didn't have the confidence that he was going to be the player we needed. And his value at the time was like 5 to 7 million or something like that. And considering the transfer budget that we had up front, I was like, that's really going to enable us to reinvest more effectively in the areas of the squad that need it. Because I like our current wingers, like our starters. And if I could essentially downgrade to get more of a rotational player for the attacking third, I would do that, because I like the wing players that we've got in the starting slots. And 6.75 million was not bad. We used an intermediary. I think we end up with like 5.25 million landing in the transfer budget, but that's almost like a 50% increase of what we had to start out. So he has gone to Tijuana, and in fact, like the news reports, I think it's kind of harsh. The transfer news said, he's never really able to make an impact. I think he did okay for the club, in 26-27 before I was here. He had 15 starts, 9 subs on a 7.12, but it seemed to fall apart last season. So one of those, like, probably good for him, good for us, and we pushed him out the door. Similarly, we pushed Stankovic out the door, 33 and a half by the summer. His physicals are falling apart, and I thought he was like a, whatever, in the hierarchy, like the highest end, like a team leader, I think. And I know it's a center back, but a 6'7", 6'4" us. I felt like there were a couple times I saw specific highlights where he had a really bad back pass or something like that caused a counterattack. He's not getting any younger. His contract was for another 2 years, I think. And I was like, what are we doing? And so he did not want to go. We eventually were able to push him out the door to go to Ascoli on 2.3 million. Again, I think that was an intermediary, helped with that, but we still ended with an additional 2 million in the budget. So by this point, if you're doing the math, we're sitting on like 19 million, something like that. Now, we might need to use some of that for wages, which I will explain now. Yes, my friends, we went back to FC Seoul. Maybe this is retribution for Alex Murphy. We've signed Svetkovic, and my thinking here is this. It always takes me a little bit of a while when I move into a new league, right? We go from Japan to South Korea, now to Austria, and the values of the players and the wages of those players are significantly different. And 2.5 million is a steal. And to be fair, I did sign that contract with him at FC Seoul, but it was because we were trying to keep him at the club. So I still think FC Seoul have done all right. They're probably not happy with me, but I can't do anything about that. And his wage request has come down because we did try and sign him, but he was wanting like 27, 28, something like that, like in like really, really high contract. But importantly, he had fallen out. They're going to list that here. He'd asked to leave. He's lost trust in the manager. And so I saw that and went, ooh, I wonder if he will be a little bit more willing to move. And so he's actually reduced his wage amount to 23 grand. Now, to be fair, after 5 international caps, he goes up to 30 grand. And he's got a minimum fee release clause of 11.25 million. We paid him a 750K bonus. So really, it's like, this is a more expensive transfer than just the 2.5 million. But I think it's really worth it. Does that mean we're going to change our tactics? I'm not sure. I've already shown you the 2 outs. Okay, so it's not like we haven't lost Mika or anything like that. But when you look at the number of games we have, especially at the beginning of the season with a Champions League and probably then eventually a Europa League run, maybe. I think there's going to be enough games to keep everyone happy. At least that's my plan, especially when I signed him. This was May 19th, so again, going back into the past. But I just couldn't pass up the value because to get an equivalent player would have been significantly more. So you obviously Stankovic is leaving. Who's coming in? Grant Davies is coming in. We paid $7.75 million, which might have been overpaying, maybe, but he had a release clause. That's what we essentially had to do. I think his value was higher at the time, 16 grand a week. So I'm actually pretty happy with that on an important player contract. He's 20 years old. Are we taking a bit of a gamble? Maybe. Just because of his age, you go like, wow, you're going to bring in a 20-year-old and make him the important player. But when you think about a club in the Austrian Bundesliga, it's like, yeah, does that kind of make sense? It does to me, right? Like, I think of like a Virgil van Dijk going to Celtic before moving on to the Premier League. We're kind of in that realm, would be, right? Like, we're not the top tier, so we're not going to be bringing in 28-year-old center backs at the peak of their powers. We're going to be bringing in 20-year-olds and giving them an opportunity to show off so that they can then be sold on. Importantly, we don't have a release clause. He does have a sell-on fee percentage. That's fine. But let's take a deeper dive on Grant here. So we are picking him up from Aberdeen. No, sorry, Middlesbrough. He was on loan at Aberdeen. He's 6'1", 13, 12, and 14 on the technical abilities of the important ones. We're not going to play him as a ball-playing defender. He is a left-footed, very strong center back, and he slots right in. We were playing Kim Joo-hyun there as a ball-playing defender, but right-footed. So now Kim Joo-hyun is going to slide over to the right center back where he's right-footed. Grant Davies is going to be that central defender on defend. I don't really want to use a stopper, I don't think, but I'm open to your ideas. I've never used a stopper in Football Manager, and it makes me a little bit nervous that he would be like rushing out and then leaving just Kim Joo-hyun in the back. So that seems not great. But look at those mentals. Aggressive, brave, good determination, good decisions, composure, and for 20 years old, concentration, 16 leadership, relatively okay positioning, good teamwork, really good physicals, likes to knock the ball past opponents with a 6 dribbling. Okay, and also doesn't dive into tackles, which maybe that just means he's, again, I'm wearing my Liverpool shirt. I'm a Liverpool fan. Like, Virgil van Dijk generally likes to stand players up and, poke the ball away versus having to slide in. He will slide in if he has to, but, I kind of went, okay, is that our version of this? He was on $4.5 grand a week, so we've given him a big raise. That's fine. He's already got a cap for Wales. But overall, the 4.5-star potential, currently 3.5-star current ability, I am pleased with this. I think this is, like, if you just do a comparison to Stankovic. Like, Stankovic technically is better at defending and attacking and technical and aerial, but Davies is 13 years younger, and I think if we just say, yep, you're going to play, I think he will quickly overtake where Stankovic's abilities currently are and expand beyond that. At least that's what I'm hoping for. So Davies solves our center back problem. We still have the left back and the ball-winning midfielder and the rotational attacking third player. So I ended up keeping Sotiris. I'm not loving that decision, but his value, our clause was for 1.9 million, but his value was dropping. He's down to 1.3 million. And again, he wanted a squad player contract, 21 grand a week. It was one of those, I kind of think about it in the same kind of vein as Svetkovic. He's not the most technical player. His mentals are all right. I like his aggression and his bravery and his work rate. His physicals are actually pretty good. I'm pleased with those. And from a value standpoint, to replace him was going to cost 4, 5, 6 million to get a really good player. He's played with us half of a season. He did all right. A 6.9 with 8 starts and 2 subs, plus a cup goal on a 7.5. Again, he's not a world beater. He's not like the stud midfielder that I was thinking we were going to get, but I think he's a good bargain. And I think sometimes at a level like this, like you have to make trade-offs. There's only so much money to go around, and we just spent almost 8 million on a 20-year-old center back, fair play, and 2.5 million on another striker, fair play. So at some point you go like, well, there's only so much money to go around, and we end up taking Sotiris. He goes from 6.25 to 21 grand. Good for him. Obviously got a 325,000 loyalty bonus. And I just want to point this out because you're probably seeing this. We did have to give Mamadi a pretty big raise. I think he was on like 13 grand. He's now on a star player contract. But importantly, we got a 30 million euro release clause. Originally, they wanted like 22 million or something like that, which was like, when you look at the value, it's like, that's too close. So that is a long-term deal. He's on contract with us for another 3 years. So not a new signing, but we had to, that is where some of the transfer budget went into the wage budget to help pay for that. So we got our center back. We kind of got our ball-winning midfielder. We need a left back, and we signed Nicholas Kolsa from Werder Bremen, who have been relegated. He had an active relegation release clause of 4 million. 30 and a half grand a week on a star player contract is a bit much. We've also paid $625K in a loyalty bonus. We have paid through the nose. There was a slew of left back options that were like 3-star, kind of like Alex Murphy level. You know, some of them could also play left wing. And I was like, well, maybe that gives us a rotational option. I did look at right backs in case we played Bona as the left back. But I think Kaza, he is 30 years old, but he just turned 30, in January. So he's 30 and a half. I think he's worth it for now. Again, there were other options I was looking at, but getting a left back, he's essentially like a slightly older version and maybe slightly better than Alex Murphy, and we could get him and he was interested. Now, he's probably interested because we gave him a 13,500 a week raise, as you do. Let me just show you some of the other options because there's not really a whole lot to show you here. Again, he did a 691 in the German Bundesliga, which I thought, okay, if he's dropping down to our level, that's a pretty good rating, especially on a team that got relegated, right? So it seems like he should be able to slot right in and do really, really well for us. These are some of the left backs I was looking at. Christopher Lund, 4.5 million, but once, like, it was crazy. 61 to 77 grand to come play at our level. He's American, playing for Udinese. Yay! Looks really good. 27. Nah, we can't pay that. So the transfer budget is really getting dwindled here. We've now got our left back, our center back, and kind of our ball-winning midfielder. And I'm looking for an attacking, ideally winger player. But then I realized something very important. We have qualified for the Champions League, which means there is going to be a requirement to have homegrown club players. We could use some of our kids. I probably should have used some of our kids because it's just one of those things like, I'm not expecting us to go that far in the Champions League. Maybe that's incorrect. Maybe we'll just surprise ourselves. But our scouts found a player that used to be at the club. And just the story of that, I was like, okay, let's go take a look. So we have signed Romano Schmid from Valencia on a free, except we're paying 37 grand in wages. We have done the Real Madrid, right? We have gotten a player on a free and just thrown all the money at the wages. So he's making, I think, the most of anybody at the club and a 750,000 loyalty bonus because his agent was quite prickly. Let's just put it that way. So we've essentially paid a 750,000 transfer fee is how I kind of look at that. But he's 29 and generally reminds me, when I see this graph on the left, I go James Milner, except he's better than James Milner and he's an attacking player, right? He's in the 10 spot. And Horvat is quite good, although if you see there on the right, Schmid is considered to be better than Horvat just ever so slightly. But I also knew Horvat can't play every single game. That just seems very unlikely. So again, they both are on regular starter / important player contracts. They're both going to want that playing time. But I think Romano also can cover somewhat reasonably those attacking winger spots, right? And if we, at some point, maybe in the Champions League or the Europa League, we play like a 4-3-3, he could drop back into the midfield. His versatility is very, very useful. Even in a bind, he doesn't know the role. Let's just look at the wing back on defend here, right? Or attack or support. He could play the left back. Ideally, he'd be playing right-footed right back. But his versatility, I think, combined with, if we go to the information here, he was trained at the club. Okay, so he counts towards that. And so I felt like we're not reaching, right, with bringing the kids into the squad. We're bringing in a guy who's really good, and with the number of games we're going to have, especially at the beginning of the season, I think he's worth it. It's like, go back to 2017-18, we sold him for 600 grand to Salzburg, and now he's made his triumphant return after having a decent career, I think you could say. Werder Bremen, and then going to Valencia. I'm not sure if that actually happened in real life, or if Werder Bremen is the last club that he was actually with in real life and where he's at right now. Have we overpaid? I think so. Our highest earner, star player, is our midfielder that we just re-signed, right? and he's on 25.5. So we have, I think, grossly overpaid. Is it worth it if it gets us like somehow into like the next phase of the Champions League? Will that pay for itself? Maybe. I'm not too sure, but yeah, that's what I did. Last but not least, I actually think this was the first player I signed, but it was so long ago. It was like in the middle of the season. I don't know if I showed it to you. We're bringing back Juan Pablo Rodriguez. We picked him up for 140 grand from Freiburg, where he gets 2 starts on a 7.2. Before that, obviously, he's with Kagoshima on a 6.85. Then he left on a free to go to Freiburg. Again, I wasn't happy with our center back like population. And if you go look at the depth chart here, you now have Davies. Our left back is second. Maidson, who is kind of like our ball-winning midfielder DM, but can also play center back. And Juan Pablo Rodriguez is the next one up in front of Melic and Kim Joo-hyun, which I'm not sure if I entirely agree with that. He doesn't enjoy big matches, but both narratively and like, I want to bring in a guy who knows how we play, right? He was one of the first players that did tiki-taka. He's got 17 tackling. His physicals, clearly not as good. And I think that's the big knock on him, right? His technicals, from a center back standpoint, I'm actually quite happy with. It's the physicals that are keeping him down. And he took a squad player contract on 12.5 grand a week. So essentially, he's a depth piece. He wanted to be a depth piece, but he also, like, we've got history. And I love that. I'm his favored personnel, as long with Sergio Ramos and Otamendi. Fair play. I'm in good company there, I think. But I think for kind of like refreshing that back line, I'm actually pretty pleased with that. So this is what the squad looks like. We are going to attempt this 4-2-3-1 because, again, especially at the beginning of the season, I don't really want to play a 4-2-4 gegenpressing and like wear us down. And we spent the preseason working on tiki-taka. It's a relatively short preseason, to be fair. Like, it was like training camp, and all of a sudden training camp disappears, and like a cup game and the 2 Champions League games appears in its place. But we've got, got some players in kind of on trial. Yuri could be the emergency cheap left back emergency backup, maybe, but not really. I have extended Baumgartner because his contract was up. I think there's potential for him to continue to grow. He's 24, and if not, we can sell him, but kind of as a rotation piece in that DM spot. And what I also like about Kim Joo-hyun, Maidson, and Melic is they all can serve in the DM role as well. So if we need to like rotate because of injuries or tiredness or something like that, they're serviceable there. The last thing I'll show you is we have pulled FC Nordland out of the Champions League path second qualifying round first leg. And second leg, obviously. So Nordland here. What's the ranking of the league? I'm just trying to find the league. Show me the league. 14th league versus we're in the 11th league in Europe. You're saying there's a chance, maybe. We also played Austria Salzburg in the cup first round. I didn't show that to you. That was like we're putting all of the rotation players in so that they can at least start the season with minutes and not be unhappy. We get a nice 4-0 win there. As you can see, we played a lot of teams in preseason. We surprisingly, and the media were surprised, got a 2-1 victory over Aston Villa on July 1st. So when we come back, I'm not going to show you the full games here. I might do the highlights with Nordland and kind of see where we end up in Europe and how that goes. Because if we go back to last season, okay, the next set of games was in August. So I think I'll bring you back to see how those games went and what that means. Are we going on to the Champions League? Are we going on to the Europa League paths and see how that goes? But I'm really curious what you think about those transfers. That's a lot of change in the squad, but I'm really happy with what we did, to be fair. I would have loved to get one really good midfielder in, but we're down to 2.7 million. I did sell a clause that we had on a player for it was like a 4.4 million clause. He had 37 more appearances and we got 3.5 for it. And that's what enabled us, I think, to bring in Schmid. So this is kind of the final screen here, if you look at it this way, from what we've brought in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 transfers in, 2 transfers out, but pretty balanced from the wages. Again, I think Ojeda I think I did really good there to get that amount of money out of that deal because it enabled the rest of them. So would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button and we'll see you next time. Will we make the Champions League? Maybe.